I haven't had a chance to confirm that. I'm sure that the Defense Minister of Israel, Moshe Aarons, will outline Israel's policy in due course, and probably before we know the full extent of what the Israelis are or not going to do, there will be additional statements coming out of Washington, probably out of Jerusalem as well. But certainly the Defense Minister of Israel speaks for Israel's defense policy, and the Israelis have always insisted that if they were attacked, if there was a first Iraqi strike against Israel, Israel would reserve the right to respond, and they have not yet, but they certainly are making it clear that they're reserving the right to do so.
Isn't that one of the big fears or concerns at the Pentagon, that this will happen, and this will actually change the plans that the United States and the Allied forces have had?
Well, it's not only the Pentagon, Cheryl, it's throughout Washington, indeed amongst many of the coalition partners, the concern that if Israel got directly involved in this operation, some of the Arab countries that are working with the United States might feel uncomfortable, and as a result, the Israelis have taken a low profile. President Bush seemed to go out of his way at his news conference earlier today to praise the Israelis for taking that low profile and to express his outrage over this incident yesterday. But we don't know what the Israeli response is going to be, and I'm sure we probably won't know until it happens.
Thank you. Wolf Blitzer reporting to us from the Pentagon. Our coverage will continue in just a moment.
To families that can't afford insurance, a house fire or other disaster often means they have nothing left, nowhere to turn. That's why your local Red Cross chapter needs you to call this number. You could help sponsor just one night of family emergency care for only $25, but it will help provide shelter, food, clothes. Please, call right away and pledge just $25 or more. And with your heart and our hands, the Red Cross will be ready.
The economy is tight and you're looking for a deal. Cable TV ads really are a steal. We'll make your commercial, we'll do it so fine. For just $39, you can buy some time. There's 9 great channels you can be on all or one. Cable TV ads are second to none. My name is Catherine Gray. Call me right away, because the price won't last long, and at $39, you can't go wrong.
Call Catherine Gray now at Store Cable Advertising at 654-6766.
This is CNN.
Once again, the sirens went off in Israel today, but the Israeli army said this one was a false alarm. Still, it was enough to force people in the Jewish state to put on gas masks. The sirens wailed during live CNN coverage in Jerusalem. The reason the alarms were sounded still isn't known. The wailing of the sirens came just hours after Iraqi missiles zoomed into Israel. Some of the missiles hit the cities of Tel Aviv and Haifa, injuring 12 people. In Washington, U.S. President George Bush had glowing words for Israel's restraint in not retaliating for that attack. There are fears that if Israel does retaliate, it will tear apart the UN coalition against Iraq. Mr. Bush promises to wipe out the remainder of Iraq's mobile missile force. Cheryl?
Time now to get a business news update from Jan Hopkins at the New York Stock Exchange. Jan?
Thanks, Cheryl. Here on Wall Street, the buying has picked up again in this last half hour of trading. The gains are accelerated by the close, at the close tonight, the expiration of the major market index. Right now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is up another 23 points at 2646.5 points. Volume is already heavy, and there will be more volume at the close tonight. 178 million shares so far trading. The advancing issues are about even with declining issues at this point. The broader and secondary markets are mixed. Oil prices have fallen sharply in the last hour. One trader citing confidence in Allied efforts against Iraq and an oversupply of oil in the market. The U.S. benchmark crude is now down $1.44 at $20 even. And that is the lowest level since before Iraq invaded Kuwait. In the credit markets, the government bond prices are posting small gains now after a bouncing around earlier. The Treasury's 30-year bellwether issue up 10/32 in the yield, 8.16%. In currency trading, the U.S. dollar is giving back early gains. It's mixed in New York trading, up a fraction of a yen against the Japanese currency, but down 1 1/3 pfennigs against the German mark and down 2 1/3 cents against the British pound. Precious metals have turned mixed. Gold settled up 70 cents at $375.10 an ounce. That's after plummeting more than $30 yesterday. Silver down another 3 cents to close at $4.01 an ounce. We'll keep you updated with the markets now, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average up 24.25 points. I'm Jan Hopkins reporting live from the New York Stock Exchange.
Thank you, Jan. It is nighttime now in Jordan. We understand during the day that the lower house of parliament met in emergency session to talk about a lot of concerns on people's minds in Jordan, expanding military training and preparations, briefing civilians on what to do in the event of war, and calling for political unity at this time in which there is a chance that hostilities could break out involving Jordan as well because of its strategic location. CNN's Margaret Lowry is in Amman, Jordan, covering the war from that country. Margaret?
Cheryl, as my colleague Charles Staker said a few moments ago, everyone in Saudi Arabia was on pins and needles. The same could be said here. Jordan is not a combatant in this crisis, but it fears because it is wedged between Israel and Iraq that it may be drawn into a conflict. There is a sense here that events are spinning out of control, and with last night's missile attack on Israel, that sense of fear is much heightened. At the street level, there is some satisfaction here that Israel has been attacked. This is, after all, a country with a majority Palestinian population. But the government has had a more measured response. Crown Prince Hassan took some of us on a trip to the border today, and he called Iraq's attack predictable. He said, after all, Iraq had warned repeatedly that it would strike Israel if the U.S.-led coalition attacked Iraq. Nonetheless, clearly there is also some dismay here because this latest turn of events does escalate things here. CNN's Doug James has this report.
Jordan's parliament held an emergency session as the tiny kingdom threatened to become a victim of its own geography. Caught in the middle between Iraq and Israel, this nation wants desperately to stay out of the war. But the Iraqi missile attack on Israel has widened the conflict and once again highlighted Jordan's vulnerability.
We are vulnerable. We're in the middle ground. We could become the killing ground simply because we are in the neighborhood of this laboratory of advanced technology and highly sophisticated weaponry.
Faced with becoming a killing field for its neighbors, politicians here want increased steps taken to protect Jordan in the days ahead.
How to really delay, if there is any attack, the forces from reaching any point till the army can be there.
The mild tone expressed in political circles bore no comparison to the jubilation of Muslims coming out of their mosques on Friday. News of the successful attack on Israel was cheered by even the youngest in the crowd.
Yeah, of course. Yes. And we hope this is just the beginning. We hope it's just the beginning.
The vast majority of Arabs here strongly support Saddam Hussein. For them, the direct attack on Israel was the fulfillment of a dream.
They are dealing now with an Arab leader who means what he says.
Jordan's Crown Prince Hassan had more than politics on his mind Friday as he toured a refugee camp straddling the border with Iraq. With financial help from the United Nations, his government is again issuing visas to those trying to flee the immediate war zone. But the government here is clearly hoping that by reopening its border with Iraq, it's not paving the way for an even bigger tragedy, by clearing the way for hundreds of thousands of war refugees to flee one battlefield, only to find themselves in the midst of another. Doug James, CNN, Amman.
Crown Prince Hassan also reiterated again that Jordan is a neutral country and has no desire to be drawn into a conflict, but that it will defend its airspace, not only against Israel, but any other nationality that should attempt to violate it. Privately, earlier today, the Jordanians were gratified that Israel had shown to date some restraint in not responding to last night's attacks, but the statements this evening out of Israel that they will retaliate has to come as very bad news here. I'm Margaret Lowry, reporting live from Amman.
Thank you, Margaret. CNN's communications with its staff in Baghdad were cut off for about 13 hours yesterday by the Iraqi government. About 5.5 hours ago, CNN's Peter Arnett was able to file this report from Baghdad while accompanied by an Iraqi censor.
It's good to be back in touch with you again from here in Baghdad. It's been a quiet afternoon in the skies over the Iraqi capital. The Gulf War, of course, is going into its second day. At the moment, however, there has been an air raid alert siren. We're in the lobby of the Al Rashid Hotel. Everyone else has been told to go to the basement shelters. They presume that an attack is coming in any moment. In the morning today, there was a series of bombings in the suburbs against targets unknown to us. During the previous evening, raids were closer to the city center, and they shook the hotel where we are staying. Government officials say the general command of the Iraqi armed forces has released a battle communique. It claims that Iraqi air defenses have knocked down 72 American and other multinational aircraft since the first bombing raids began in the early morning hours of Thursday. Today, the government claims 7 aircraft were shot down, 5 in the battlefront and 2 inside Iraq. The communique also said that in response to the aerial bombardments of the multinational coalition, Iraq launched what it called its own effective strikes, setting fire to enemy targets and inflicting casualties. They are their words. We've just been talking to the Minister of Information, who's given a brief press conference. He was asked by the press to show us some of the wreckage and if there were any captured American pilots and could we meet them. He said there were captured American pilots, we could meet them soon, but he added no further clarification. Now, the International Press Corps in Baghdad is operating under censorship as from today. Under this policy, we are required to submit our stories in advance to officials from the Information Ministry to read. Reporters have been permitted to travel around the capital. CNN has reduced its personnel here from 8 to 3 as the International Press Corps continues to dwindle. The Al Rashid Hotel has become a haven for foreigners, some unintentionally caught up in the hostilities, and they're now trying to seek to escape overland to Jordan. Peter Arnett reporting live from Baghdad.
5 of the 8 remaining staff members at the CNN Bureau in Baghdad were among the journalists who left the Iraqi capital by car today to drive to Jordan. When we come back, Ralph Wingy will have an interview with a Palestinian leader from our bureau in Jerusalem. Stay with us.
Just how often have you dropped what you're doing to get to a sale and thought, this is all that's on sale? What? Well, come to the National Home Appliance Sale at Sears Brand Central, okay? America's largest appliance sale with virtually every major brand on sale. GE, Whirlpool, Kenmore. Ooh, save 130 clams on our 22 cubic foot Kenmore side-by-side. Look at that thing. 75 on our huge 21 cubic foot Kenmore. Right now at Sears Brand Central. But you better hurry. Gotta go. Before you're left out in the cold.
Great food must be eaten in the morning.
The man who wrote the book on Florida grapefruit is history.
You don't just have to have it in the morning. You can feel it anytime you feel it. Slice it if you like it as a treat. You just can't beat it. Florida grapefruit anytime.
Grapefruit, fresh from Florida and Florida's Indian River.
You don't just have to have it in the morning.
In weather this raw, don't take chances, take chapstick. This infrared camera compares lips sealed with chapstick and lips without chapstick. Chapstick seals in moisture to heal and prevent chapped lips. Don't take chances, take chapstick.
They're coming! Dow Bathroom Cleaner with scrubbing bubbles. It's 50% stronger than original Dow Bathroom Cleaner. We work even harder, so you don't have to.
The war in the Gulf. CNN is the network for the most complete coverage from the Middle East and throughout the world. Now, more than ever, shouldn't you be watching the network viewers voted best in coverage of the crisis in the Gulf? CNN.
Our coverage continues now with CNN's Ralph Begleiter, who has an update for us from the State Department. Ralph?
A briefing has just concluded here at the State Department for scores of ambassadors to Washington from other nations around the world by Assistant Secretary of State John Kelly, who is apparently explaining to the ambassadors the U.S. military objectives in the Gulf and the political objectives as well. Aides to Kelly suggest that the United States is attempting to keep in line any defections from the international coalition against Iraq, and also to explain the views of the United States about how diplomacy might be conducted if and when the Gulf War ends. Officials here at the State Department suggest that there is no concrete diplomacy underway now, despite the gathering, the unusual gathering of all of Washington's diplomatic corps here at the State Department a short while ago. But this is a method of explaining to them why there is nothing being done at the moment. U.S. position, of course, is that until Saddam Hussein withdraws completely from Kuwait and allows the restoration of the Kuwaiti government, the bombardment by the international coalition will not end. Ralph Beglatter, CNN, reporting live from the State Department.
Thank you, Ralph. We're going to take you back to Jerusalem now, specifically to our bureau there. We're going to have a conversation with a Palestinian leader from the West Bank. He is a professor. His name is Musa Badera. Mr. Badera, I am interested in finding out from you, as you come from your people right now, exactly what is going on in the Persian Gulf now, how in the long term that is going to either help or hurt your cause.
Well, I think that to begin with, what has been very important for people here is that the Iraqis have been able to withstand the military onslaught that has been unleashed against them. I think this is something which is very important to keep in mind. Second point is that people here cannot understand how it is possible to divorce the two issues, the occupation of Kuwait and the occupation of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. So from these two perspectives, I think people link any resolution of the ongoing conflict in the Persian Gulf today with a resolution of the Israeli occupation of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip.
But they must have been aware, they must have heard that if Saddam Hussein had pulled his troops out of Kuwait, then serious dialogue over the Arab-Israeli issue would be conducted.
I'm sorry, I don't think I got this. I don't think I heard you very well.
There were promises from numerous world leaders that if Iraq had pulled out of Kuwait, then serious discussions would begin.
Yes, I've got you. I think the issue is not the promises from numerous world leaders, because I think that a lot of these world leaders have already committed themselves to the idea of an international conference. I think the issue here is the United States in the first place and the Israeli government in the second place. These two important players have definitely not committed themselves and have been adamant about rejecting any kind of linkage. And I think this is the point that matters, really. Not what President Mitterrand says or President Gorbachev, but what Mr. Bush says and what Mr. Shamir says.
Are the Palestinians frightened that Saddam Hussein will be overcome?
I don't think it's a question of fright. I think it's obvious to everybody that here we have an unequal battle, that we have two very unequal forces ranged on either side of the firing line. I don't think that they're afraid he's going to be overcome, but I don't think at the same time that they see his situation as one in which a clear victory can be declared. I think that what they are looking for is a compromise, and I think from their perspective, the Iraqis have been offering a compromise before the outbreak of hostilities, and that Saddam Hussein's job is withstanding this military onslaught which has been unleashed against him, as I said before, in order to make the other side accept the need for a compromise.
Have you heard recently that when this conflict is finally over, that the Arabs will finally sit down and say, wait a minute, we have got to really seriously do something about this, and the Israelis will finally sit down and say, wait a minute, we have got to deal with the Palestinians in a way we haven't done before, give them the rights they deserve and so forth, and that somehow when this conflict ends, the people are going to get together and make enormous changes, maybe historic changes in the Middle East?
I hope so, but I think that the onus here is on the Israelis and on the United States. I think that the Palestinians have already said repeatedly, let's sit down and sort this out. And I think that the latest missile attack on Tel Aviv and on Haifa is an indication of where things have been, of how things have been allowed to drift. The Israelis have been talking about security. I think this has shown that security will not come through military strength. Security will come through dialogue, through coexistence, and through an acceptance that the other side has rights which have to be fulfilled.
All right. Musa Budjera, thank you very much for being with us today. And we'll be back with more of our coverage right after this.
The average cost of this luxury car is $37,000. The average cost of the American home is $134,000. The average cost of a private college education is $45,891. Yet the cost to examine this magazine is nothing. Just call this number now and we'll send you Money Magazine to examine risk-free. If you like it, do nothing and we'll continue your subscription with articles on better ways to cut your taxes, how to look for a smart investment that delivers exceptional returns. Money will show you ways to improve your lifestyle, get more value from your home. We'll even outline 12 steps to financial security. So in a world where costs are high and so are risks, take advantage of Money's risk-free offer. Call this number now. We'll send you your first issue of Money Magazine to examine risk-free. If you find Money is not for you, then just write cancel on the bill and send it back. The issue is yours to keep free. Otherwise, we'll continue your subscription with 12 more informative, entertaining issues for a total of 13, payable in 4 monthly installments of just $8.99 each. Your taxes average $4,800. A retirement plan costs $2,400 yearly. Yet these financial guides cost you nothing. Because if you call now, we'll also send you Money's financial advisor free. It's a 3-part series that helps you manage your taxes, retire worry-free, invest and win. So why not call now and examine your first issue of Money risk-free? Plus, get the financial advisor free. And while the average American phone bill is $45.33, this phone call will cost you nothing. Call this number now and take advantage of Money's risk-free offer. It has the perfect ring to it.
On what must be an extremely tense night in Saudi Arabia, CNN's John Sweeney has an update for us. John?
Well, Cheryl, despite the claims by Baghdad that it has shot down a large number of American planes, General Norman Schwarzkopf claims the number of Allied planes shot down stands at 7, including 3 American planes. Now, the commander of the Allied forces, who gave his first wartime briefing in this room in Riyadh earlier this afternoon, says that at this point the operation is the best that he has ever seen in his long military career. He says his intelligence has located 11 Iraqi mobile missile launchers, the kind used by Iraq to fire upon Israel last night. He says his Air Force has eliminated some of them already, and he said that he would set his Air Force out today to eliminate the rest of them. He says their destruction would eliminate a high percentage of the number of mobile launchers possessed by Iraq, but he indicated that even his vast intelligence network could not pinpoint the exact number of mobile launchers possessed by Iraq. Now, Schwarzkopf was the man who heads the Allied Air Force here, Lieutenant General Chuck Horner, who brought with him some graphic proof of Allied air superiority.
This is a runway at an airfield halfway between Baghdad and Kuwait. The center of the runway is the end point. This is where the laser designator is pointed. This is taken at night with infrared sensors. And there the bomb goes off in the center of the runway. And heat shows up as white. And now you'll see the pilot switch to a higher magnification and as he flies away from the target. This is the smoke plume from the bomb, and there's the crater. The next one is a Scud storage building in Kuwait, and keep your eye on the entrance to the storage. Again, the pilot has released his bombs about 2 miles away. He's banking away from the target, leaving the target area, lasing the target, and you'll see 2 bombs fly into the door of the storage bunker. You can almost get airsick watching this. And you'll be able to count each bomb. 1, 2. Those are 2,000-pound bombs. This is the air defense headquarters in the vicinity of Baghdad. These are air shafts that provide best access into this concrete structure. And keep your eye on the front door, the airlock door, as the debris comes out the door from the bomb going in this lead-in air shaft. There it goes in, and here comes the debris. This is another air defense sector over in the western part of Iraq. It's already been struck by a 117. This is a team effort. The second aircraft comes through, and this part of the building here provides some constructional weakness that will be exploited in this attack, and the bomb will hit in this area here. And this is my counterpart's headquarters in Baghdad. This is the headquarters of the Air Force, and keep your eye on all sides of the building as the airplane overflies the building and drops the bomb down through the center of the building.
And that's a kind of awesome power that should continue tonight and probably tomorrow. I'm John Sweeney, CNN, live in Riyadh.
John, thank you. The command for the U.S. Atlantic Fleet Naval Surface Force is changing today. The ceremonies are aboard the amphibious assault ship, the USS Wasp. That's at the naval base in Norfolk, Virginia. CNN's Tom Mintier is there now for a live report. Tom?
Ralph, I am standing beside the USS Wasp, and around this area are several ships that may be leaving in the next few days. If not the Wasp, but several others may be leaving in the next few days. At this change of command ceremony, the Admiral of the Supreme Allied Command, the Commander-in-Chief of the Atlantic Fleet, talked about the reason for all of the money being spent before. He says that the Tomahawk missiles made it worthwhile, and he was here to defend defense spending.
We know where the Tomahawks go. They go directly on target. Now, the military is often criticized for inadequate planning, lack of foresight, poor strategic thinking, lack of a coherent strategy, buying the wrong equipment, buying too much equipment, preparing for the wrong war. And you've heard these things over and over and over. Well, I want to assure you that what the world is witnessing today is not an ad-lib execution of an ill-prepared military, one that is lacking a plan or an organization to respond to such a crisis. Desert Shield and now Desert Storm is working precisely because we have a plan. We have trained to meet this potential contingency. We do have logistics plans. We have bought the right equipment. That equipment works, and that equipment is properly maintained.
The Tomahawk cruise missile is part of a program that was being harshly criticized for a long time, but it was what the Iraqis were hearing and looking for airplanes at the wrong time, and instead the Tomahawks were on their way to their targets. I'm Tom Mintier, CNN, reporting live from Norfolk.
And we'll be back with more of our special coverage, including a live report from the Pentagon with Wolf Blitzer.
Okay. I'm Cheryl Atkinson.
I'm Ralph.
Company to
You've heard all the facts. You know Home Shopping Club has great prices. You know they stand behind everything they sell. But maybe you're asking yourself, does Home Shopping Club sell anything I want to buy? Now, aren't you glad you asked?
Home Shopping Club. Great bargains guaranteed.
To families that can't afford insurance, a house fire or other disaster often means they have nothing left, nowhere to turn. That's why your local Red Cross chapter needs you to call this number. You could help sponsor just one night of family emergency care for only $25. But it will help provide shelter, food, clothes. Please, call right away and pledge just $25 or more. And with your heart and our hands, the Red Cross will be ready.
The heat wave is here at Austin Burke's. For the largest selection in every size and a guaranteed fit, my personal clothier is Austin Burke.
For over 45 years, Austin Burke has been the leader in men's fashions. We feature over 10,000 suits, sport coats, and slacks from sizes 27 to 74. Select from European and traditional fashions of the finest materials.
Every day is sale day at Austin Burke. Hold it! Don't take that off. You look too good.
IGT, in good taste. Tomorrow's charge card today. IGT is now accepted in more than 300 locations in South Florida and over 3,300 locations nationwide. Plus, you get 25% off all your purchases. IGT. For further information and application, please call 1-800-4IGT-USA.
This is CNN.
Our coverage of the Gulf War continues. Let us sum what has been happening in recent hours. Just over 2 hours ago, air raid sirens wailed across Israel the second time today. The country braced itself for an Iraqi missile attack. But now the Israeli army says the air raid was a false alarm. In another development, Israeli Defense Minister Moshe Aarons now says Israel will retaliate for the Iraqi Scud missile attack earlier today. He says Israel will respond, in his words, at the opportune moment. With more now on today's developments in the Persian Gulf, CNN's Al Hinman.
In Israel, once again, the sounds of air raid sirens. Israeli Deputy Foreign Minister Benjamin Netanyahu interrupts a live interview on CNN to don a gas mask. Again, the threat of escalating the war with Israeli retaliation to an Iraqi attack. Minister Netanyahu responds after the all-clear was sounded.
Well, we've said that the issue here isn't merely one of retaliation. It's one, obviously, of self-defense. I think all your viewers can appreciate that now. We're not going to allow Israel to be in a position where every night or every day its citizens are threatened with gas attacks, with TNT raining down on their heads by this brutal, savage dictator. He should know that. If he doesn't know it, he will know it.
Operation Desert Storm's initial air assault on Baghdad.
One of the things they're going after are those mobile Scud ballistic missile sites, the ones that possibly, and we stress possibly, carry chemical warheads. The military experts say here that a ground war is probably coming, and with that, the Army and Marine ground troops up toward the Kuwaiti border are preparing for some sort of chemical warfare. That's what they're working on, trying on their chemical suits, the Army making sure that its troops are prepared just in case chemical warfare should break out. This despite the statement of a Saudi Arabian general on Saudi Arabia radio a few hours ago, claiming that almost all of Iraq's chemical weapons potential has been destroyed. I think the key word there for everyone in Saudi Arabia is almost. There's no way of knowing how much of the chemical weapons potential has been destroyed. Up toward the border on the ground, we still have sporadic reports that U.S. Marines and the Iraqis in Kuwait are trading artillery shells, that there are sporadic artillery duels with howitzers going on back and forth across the border. So far, The reports we have here are that 4 Marines, U.S. Marines, were injured, 1 seriously by this incoming fire. They've been lobbing shells at each other. First reports we got started about 24 hours ago of that, and from presumably, and we state presumably because we've had no more recent reports, that kind of thing may still be going on. Inside Kuwait itself, we have reports from the Kuwaiti resistance relayed through Kuwaiti officials here in Saudi Arabia that Iraqi troop morale, at least according to the Kuwaiti resistance, is low, that explosions have been heard all around Kuwait City, but not in the residential areas, that in many cases, Kuwaiti's private vehicles, at least those private vehicles that hadn't already been commandeered by the Iraqis, you'll have to excuse me, by the Iraqis during their occupation, are being taken now, and the Kuwaiti resistance believes that's because the Iraqi soldiers might want to use them to take off, try to blend into the civilian population in case fighting breaks out. The Iraqi resistance claims that, the Kuwaiti resistance claims that Iraqi soldiers have pretty much gone off the streets of residential areas and are now taking up locations in schools and other houses. Charles Jaco, CNN, reporting live from Saudi Arabia.
Charles, a quick question about how folks in your area are bearing up under the apprehension, the anxiety. We noticed during Richard Blystone's report earlier the palpable tension in Israel. Is there anything to compare with that where you are?
Well, there's certainly tension here, especially in an area that you figure the Iraqis might want to attack, but there's nothing like wholesale panic. There's people are not running around in the streets crying. There's no panic feeling at all. People are tense. They're waiting. They're going about their jobs. There's still traffic on the street. The stores are open. The Saudi government is offering gas masks at a pretty reasonable price to its citizens. A lot of people have bought them so that people here are taking precautions. They are prepared. But everything, as far as we've been able to ascertain on the part of the civilian population here in eastern Saudi Arabia, is very calm and very businesslike, but very tense.
All right, Charles Jaco in Saudi Arabia. We'll be back with you. And we'll be back in a minute. We'll be checking in on the financial markets and a report from the White House as our coverage of the war in the Gulf continues. Are fluctuating. Lou Dobbs is at the Business News Desk in New York with the latest. Luke.
Lou, thank you. Everything on Wall Street, of course, dominated by news from the Gulf. On Wall Street today, less euphoria than yesterday.
We'll try to stop them. Clearly, not only the army, but Jordan would take a terrible bruising. But in a confrontation with any aggressor, we would clearly stand up and be counted.
Not many have crossed the border this week, a few thousand at most. But officials are expecting many more, possibly 750,000. If Jordan is drawn into the conflict, the flow of refugees across this border could slow to almost nothing. Jordan at war would be a safe haven for no one. John Donovan, ABC News, at the Jordanian-Iraqi border.
When we come back, the effect of the war on the environment, if it got out of hand, it could be devastating. And today's high technology in the air from the pilot's point of view.
Did you know? And they shook the hotel where we are staying. Government officials say the general command of the Iraqi armed forces has released a battle communique. It claims that Iraqi air defenses have knocked down 72 American and other multinational aircraft since the first bombing raids began in the early morning hours of Thursday. Today, the government claims 7 aircraft were shot down, 5 in the battlefront and 2 inside Iraq. The communique also said that in response to the aerial bombardment of the multinational coalition, Iraq launched what it called its own effective strikes, setting fire to enemy targets and inflicting casualties. They are their words. We've just been talking to the Minister of Information, who's given a brief press conference. He was asked by the press to show us some of the wreckage and if there were any captured American pilots and could we meet them. He said there were captured American pilots. We could meet them soon, but he added no further clarification. Now, the International Press Corps in Baghdad is operating under censorship as from today. Under this policy, we are required to submit our stories in advance to officials from the Information Ministry to read. Reporters have been permitted to travel around the capital. CNN has reduced its personnel here from 8 to 3 as the International Press Corps continues to dwindle. The Al Rashid Hotel has become a haven for foreigners, some unintentionally caught up in the hostilities, and they're now trying to seek to escape overland to Jordan. Peter Arnett reporting live from Baghdad.
And CNN has received word that correspondents Bernard Shaw and John Holloman, along with 3 other staff members, have arrived safely in Jordan. They are expected to reach Amman within the hour.
Blood from civilian donors in the United States is being shipped to the military. That has created worries that the war in the Gulf may create a blood shortage in the United States. But officials at U.S. blood banks say that's not the case because blood donors are responding above and beyond the call of duty, as CNN's Pat Etheridge now reports.
They are streaming in record numbers.
You're off and running.
Americans giving blood for their brothers and sisters in the Middle East.
I may not be on the front line, but I believe this is the best way to show my support.
But the recent outpouring has been so dramatic, it's creating concerns for the nation's civilian blood centers.
What might happen is if everybody who's eligible to donate comes in the next several days, then 3 or 4 weeks from now, we could experience a shortage of donors at that point because everyone's already